So, Sappho's Fables Volume 1, which I read in January, was supposed to review in February, and I'm finally posting a video on in March. The complete title of this one is Sappho's Fables Volume 1, 3 Lesbian Fairy Tale Novellas by Elora Bishop and Jennifer Diemer. Anyone who follows me on Goodreads knows that I absolutely adored this collection. However, I'm going to try and provide a more coherent analytical review instead of just sort of going eee for like 3 minutes. This is a collection of 3 fairy tale retellings that feature romances between 2 lady characters in each of them. The 3 fairy tale retellings that are included in Volume 1 are Seven, a Snow White retelling, Braided, a Rapunzel retelling, and Crumbs, a Hansel and Gretel retelling. Both Elora Bishop and Jennifer Diemer strip each fairy tale down to the bare bones, the bare essentials, and then sort of rebuild from the ground up. And as a result, they give us a really fresh, imaginative perspective on these fairy tales. Seven, our Snow White retelling by Jennifer Diemer, is sort of a Snow White retelling meets a Bluebeard retelling. Even though Snow White is probably one of my least favorite fairy tales, particularly of the Grimm brothers fairy tales, I really did like this retelling. In Seven, there is a stepmother, there are 7 something, not necessarily dwarves, but something. There's a huntsman, there's apples, but it's not really anything like the original story. There's new elements, and the old elements that are there are twisted to sort of suit the new story. I also really like the way the authors portray the female characters of the original stories. In particular, the female characters that are the villains of the original stories. The stepmother in Snow White is our protagonist, and we see the story from her perspective. However, it's not the Snow White story you're familiar with. In terms of main characters, we have Catalina, who has been married to an alchemist, and then the other person in the house is Lyxander's daughter, Neve, who serves as the Snow White figure. In terms of characters, Catalina and Neve are probably more forgettable than some of the other characters in this, but in terms of setting and story and the way it's retold, it's one of the more memorable ones. The second retelling in this collection is Braided by Elora Bishop, and it's a Rapunzel retelling. Our protagonist is Grey, the daughter of the local witch, who was originally destined to be on top of a platform next to a holy tree that has withered and died, and spend her entire life there listening to the prayers of people who used to pray to the tree, but now will pray to the person on top of the platform who has sort of taken on the spirit of the tree. The witch of the story is the main character's mother, and while the witch definitely does a few things that are questionable, her daughter always reiterates that it's not really her mother's fault. She was forced to by circumstance, and she was doing it with her daughter's best interest at heart. So again, there's a female villain of the original story, aka the witch of Rapunzel, being humanized and given depth. I really liked that. Now in Seven by Jennifer Diemer, all the characters in that story are characters from the original fairy tale. They have direct correspondence. However, in Braided, there's some more original characters. In particular, the Not Quite There fair. And then I think it's also arguable that Grey is an original character, even though she was sort of meant to be the Rapunzel character. They're all really sweet and all really fun to read, but I think this was the one that really softened my cold, dead heart and made me go, aww. The last retelling in this collection is Crumbs, a Hansel and Gretel retelling by Elora Bishop. Crumbs is definitely the most different out of all the stories. When I think of fairy tale retellings, I don't think post-apocalyptic zombie thrillers. This novella really surprised me. I actually really enjoyed Crumbs. Greta, our protagonist of Crumbs, has probably the most memorable narration out of all the stories. Her slang and the way she talks is all very distinctive, very memorable, and I feel like in the hands of a lesser author could actually be really annoying. The zombies in the story are not called zombies, they're called ragers, but this didn't bother me because I kind of giggle uncontrollably every time I see the word zombie written in print. Admittedly, your mileage may vary. I was distrustful of almost every character in this story with the exception of Greta. I was pretty sure this was going to end terribly, even though I knew logically that it probably wasn't going to, based on sort of the... I mean, look at this. It's a happy collection. It's a feel-good collection with some dark elements. In terms of criticisms, I will say that at times some of the prose got a little purpley, just a tad, but I was so in love with the stories and just so enthralled by their imaginative retellings that it didn't bother me. If you're familiar with the original fairy tales, you'll definitely be able to see the original stories and how they're interwoven into the new stories, and I think that's really neat. I really hope the release dates that are currently posted on Elora Bishop's blog for the Rumpelstiltskin retelling and the Little Red Riding Hood retelling in the next volume don't get pushed back again, because I honestly can't wait. If you enjoy fairy tales, I think there's a lot to love about these retellings in particular. Overall, I gave Sappho's Fables 5 out of 5 stars on my Goodreads. I highly recommend it, particularly if you're looking for something fresh and imaginative in fairy tale retellings. Rated, which is a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, that's totally wrong. Okay,